On the morning of January the 12th, 1888, the sky over the Great Plains was unseasonably warm. Children walked to one-room schoolhouses in shirt sleeves. Their parents waved them off. By that evening, more than 200 people were dead, and most of the dead were children trying to make it home. There was a weather warning system in 1888. It issued a forecast that afternoon. It just didn't arrive in time to save them. This is how people survived weather they could never see coming, and what it cost them when the sky turned without warning. The children's blizzard did not arrive as a wall of black sky. It arrived as a continuation of a mild January day. And that was the trap. Across the Dakota Territory, Nebraska, and Minnesota, the morning of January 12th broke warm, near 50 degrees in some places, balmy enough that the air felt like an early spring. Parents sent their children out the door without coats. The previous days had been bitter, and the thaw was a relief. Snow on the ground was still crusty and old, but the air itself was soft. There was nothing in it to warn anyone. The country these children walked through had been settled in many places less than a decade. Nebraska's population had grown roughly ninefold by 1890, fueled by homesteading families who had come from Germany, Scandinavia, and the eastern states to claim free land under the Homestead Act. They built quickly and cheaply because the work of breaking prairie sod was long, and the weather was only one of many things trying to kill them. A sod schoolhouse had walls 2 feet thick, but it was roofed with planks and a few inches of sod over them, enough to keep a draft out on a calm day, not enough to hold against a sustained wind. A single pot-bellied stove sat in the center of the room, and a teacher had to decide each morning how much fuel to burn. Because coal and split wood cost real money, and the supply for the week had to last. There was no insulation worth naming. There was no safe room. There was no phone. The children who walked to school that morning were not dressed for the cold because the day had told them not to be. They left in woolen stockings, thin jackets, and the assumption that the morning was what the morning was. Their teachers, most of them young women in their late teens or early 20s, met them at the schoolhouse door and took attendance. Lessons began. The sky outside stayed soft and pale. By noon, in many districts, the oldest children were dismissed first so they could begin the walk home. Sometimes a mile or more over open prairie with no trees for shelter and no landmarks in a whiteout. That is the architecture of the morning that lied. It looked safe because it was, until it wasn't. The change came in mid-afternoon, and it came hard. A cold front that had been building over the northern plains for days swept south. The temperature in some places crashed by more than 60 degrees in as few as 3 hours. Sustained winds of 30 miles an hour and more drove snow sideways through air that had been warm enough for shirt sleeves 2 hours before. Visibility dropped from miles to feet. The snow didn't fall. It flew horizontally, packed into a white wall that swallowed the landscape, including the path home. Inside the one-room schoolhouses, teachers faced a decision that nothing in their training had prepared them for. The children were already cold and beginning to panic. The single stove was running low on fuel. The walls were flexing. The roof in some buildings was already lifting, 2 paths forward, and no way to know which one led the children home alive. Some teachers held their students in. They herded them away from the drafty walls, banked the stove with whatever fuel remained, covered the small ones with anything available, and waited. In a sod schoolhouse in Valley County, Nebraska, the wind tore the door off its hinges and peeled back part of the roof. The teacher, 19 years old, in charge of 13 children in their stockings, got them to the floor, kept them together, and when the building could no longer hold, led them out into the whiteout. The story told afterward said she tied them with a clothesline. At least one of the children who survived said that wasn't quite how it happened, that they simply held on to each other, hand to hand, and followed her voice. The exact detail is smaller than what matters. 13 children walked out of a roofless building in a blizzard, and all 13 lived. A song was written about it within weeks. Whether the rope was real or remembered into being, the line of small figures moving through white nothing at the edge of the prairie is what survived. Other teachers made a different call. They wrapped the children up and sent them toward the houses they could no longer see. The path home was, in many cases, less than 2 miles. In a whiteout on open prairie, with the temperature still falling, it might as well have been 100. The death toll is often given as a number, and the most cited number is about 235, but the number does not land. The people do. Lois Royce taught at a school near Plainview, Nebraska. She had 3 pupils that day, 2 9-year-old boys and a 6-year-old girl. She kept them inside until 3 in the afternoon when the fuel ran out. Then she wrapped the children and led them toward her boarding house, 82 yards away. 82 yards. In a whiteout, even grown adults lost their bearings in less. The 4 of them became disoriented in the space between the schoolhouse door and the front step. Royce survived. Her feet were amputated. All 3 children were dead by morning. Ole Olesen Tysland was 63 years old and lived near Brookings in the Dakota Territory. When the storm hit, he went out to tend his livestock. His wife watched him from the door. He made it back to the house and reached for the handle. He was found the next morning, 12 feet from the front step, frozen solid. Etta Shattuck was 19 and traveling alone across open country in Holt County, Nebraska, on the day the storm broke. She was on her way to collect her final wages before leaving teaching to care for her father, a disabled Civil War veteran who could not work. Her horse turned back. She walked. The cold found her before any shelter did, and she found a haystack and dug into it with her bare hands. She was discovered 78 hours later by a man named Daniel Murphy and a team of hired riders. Both her feet were black to the knee. She died of her injuries on February 6th, 3.5 weeks after the morning that lied. A father named Michael Klein in Schuyler, Nebraska, heard the wind change and walked out toward the schoolhouse to bring his children home. His children survived because their teacher held them inside. Klein's body was found in a drift before the schoolyard. He had died trying to reach a building his own children never needed to leave. The pattern across that day was not subtle. Children whose teachers held them in the schoolhouse, even when the schoolhouse lost its roof, even when the stove went cold, were far more likely to live. Children sent into the whiteout, even with coats they did not have, even with adults trying to guide them, were far more likely not to. The cost of the storm fell hardest on the smallest bodies, and it fell on them because of decisions made in the first few minutes of panic, by people who had no way to know which decision was right. There was a weather warning system in 1888. It was nearly 2 decades old. It was not secret. The U.S. Army Signal Service had been issuing forecasts since November of 1870, born out of a wish to protect Great Lakes shipping from the kind of storm that killed sailors with no warning. By 1886, the service had set up nearly 300 display stations across the country, mostly at post offices and railroad depots, where a forecast flag was hoisted at noon each day. The cold wave flag was 6 feet by 6 feet, white with a black square in the center, raised when a sudden and severe drop in temperature was expected. A farmer who saw that flag above his town's post office was supposed to understand. The air is about to turn dangerous. Do what you need to do. For January 12, 1888, the warning was issued from the Signal Service office in St. Paul. It was substantially correct. The forecasters saw the front coming. They understood the speed. They put the warning on the wire that afternoon. The problem was the wire. Western Union lines carried the warning outward, but the storm was already on top of the region. Telegraph poles were coming down. To the Black Hills and across much of Dakota Territory, the line went dead before the message reached the operators who would have raised the flag. The children who had walked home at noon in shirt sleeves were already in the open. The flag that should have been hoisted at the post office in their town was standing furled, or the postmaster was already fighting to keep his own family alive. The race between the warning and the cold was lost by hours, and the warnings, even when they did reach people, were not always believed. Across the prairie, a competing tradition of weather prediction had held ground for generations. Almanacs sold forecasts based on sunspots, moon phases, and secret formulas, and they were treated as more honest than anything the federal government could produce. A farmer in 1889 reading his almanac by candlelight, checking the phase of the moon against a prediction of snow, was not unusual. He had been told since he was a boy that the sky belonged to the people who watched it, and that a man in a uniform in a distant city had no business telling him what his own weather would do. The Signal Service was blamed for the January deaths, and again, 2 months later, for the Great White Hurricane that killed around 400 people in the Northeast. In 1890, the forecasting function was moved out of the Army and into a civilian weather bureau under the Department of Agriculture. The cold wave flag kept flying. The trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up. For the children of January 1888, the relief arrived too late by a year and a half and 100 miles, and the width of a telegraph line that would not hold. Today, the thing that used to kill is something you check before you leave the house. You tap a phone, a small map appears. The next 7 days are laid out in colored bars: sun, cloud, a number beside a droplet, a number beside a snowflake. You glance at it on the porch, or in the car, or in the elevator, and the day arranges itself around what you saw. You might not even open the app. The weather might just be there in a corner of the screen, accepted the way a wall is accepted. 140 years ago, no one had that. A morning's warmth was a morning's warmth, and it meant nothing about what the afternoon would bring. A schoolhouse was a building made of sod and hope, and a teacher was a 19-year-old girl with a single stove and no way to call for help. A haystack was a coffin or a refuge, depending on how deep your hands could dig. A flag at the post office was the only voice the government had, and sometimes the wire went dead before the voice could finish. You do not think about the forecast. That is the point. The forgetting is complete. The sky still does what it wants, and the prairie is still out there. And somewhere, on a day exactly like that one, the air is warm and soft, and the children are walking home without coats. What's a warning you ignored today that your great-grandparents would have taken seriously? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, the forgotten cost of the comforts we take for granted, subscribe to the Origin Portal.